Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, October the 16th, 2023. Over the last week, I have been looking at the Middle East quite a lot. I've been looking at particular horoscopes. I looked at the horoscope of Benjamin Netanyahu. I looked at the horoscope of the Jordanian king, Abdullah II. Then there were some national charts, a chart of Palestine, and of course the chart of Israel. And in this video, I wanted to focus on Hamas. Now, I don't really know very much about them. You know, this is an astrology channel. It's not a politics channel. So I don't claim to have any sort of detailed knowledge about the politics of Hamas. So what I wanted to do is just simply look at the horoscopes of two of its leaders. So these leaders are Ismail Haniyeh, who is the chairman of the Hamas Political Bureau. Now, I may have got this wrong, but as far as I can see, he's kind of the head of Hamas, though I'm sure that's a complete generalization, and it doesn't quite work like that. I don't know. And he operates out of Qatar. So the idea is that the person who is the chairman of the Hamas Political Bureau, in fact, if it's right to call him the head of Hamas, he's not actually in the Gaza Strip. He's in Qatar, and I do want to look at his chart. His chart is kind of interesting because he was born on January the 29th, 1962. I don't know his time of birth. Now that means that he was born the day before King Abdullah II. Now, King Abdullah II, we do have a time of birth for, but that means that Ismail Haniyeh's horoscope it's not just similar; it's almost identical to King Abdullah. Although we have to accept we don't have a time of birth, so we don't have ascendants, we don't have houses for Ismail Haniyeh. So, these two men were born within not much more than 24, probably around 24 hours apart, could be less. So they were born very closely. And so when we look at the planets in Ismail Haniyeh's chart, they're in the same place as they are in the chart of King Abdullah, including the moon. They both have moon in Scorpio. And so, I want to look at that. Obviously, they're two completely different people. If we had Haniyeh's chart, we'd have a time of birth, and we would have an ascendant, and I'm sure it would be different to that to King Abdullah's ascendant. Now, the second chart I want to look at is that of Yahya Sinwar, who I probably haven't pronounced that right. I'm sure I haven't pronounced that right. He is Hamas chief in the Gaza Strip, and I think I've seen him described as being number two, if you take Ismail Haniyeh as number one in a leadership. But I may have got that wrong. In his case, if you actually go to the Wikipedia page for Yahya Sinwar, it just simply says he's born in 1962. If you go into the languages bit on Wikipedia and go to the Arabic bit, I mean, obviously I don't speak Arabic, but if one puts up the Arabic Wikipedia page and you look at the English translation, it says he's born on October the 29th, 1962. Same if you do the Russian version. Again, I don't speak Russian, but you can it comes up with this date, October the 29th, 1962. I don't know what the original was. So I'm going for October the 29th, 1962. That's the source I've got. If I've got that wrong, I'm sorry. So, both men are born in 1962. Like me, I'm born in 1962. So they're the two men who are high up in the leadership of Hamas. And so I want to look at their horoscopes and, look at what was going on, if anything, at the time of the attack on Israel on October the 7th. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is October the 16th, 2023. So let's transition in and look at the astrology for today. Now, on the top right, that is Ismail Haniyeh. Someone must have spent a lot of time on that beard. That beard looks really well groomed. I don't know. He must be very proud of his beard. So as far as today is concerned, today is Monday, October 16th, 2023. This is a chart set for New York. I'm not convinced that anything particularly dramatic is happening in this horoscope. That's not to say that nothing is going to happen in the world, but there are very few spectacular exact aspects in there. The one that sort of grabs me, if anything, is the quintile between Jupiter and Saturn. So there's Saturn. You can see Saturn at noon was at 048 Pisces, and Jupiter is at 1248 Taurus. So you can see they're exactly 72 degrees apart. And 72 degrees is 1/5 of the circle. So if you have a cake and you cut it into exactly 5 parts, each part will be 72 degrees. So it's all about number 5. So what does number 5 mean? I have one view of number 5. I think this is the view of there was a writer on harmonics, David Hamblin. He wrote a book in the 1980s, and I seem to remember that he associated the number 5 with style, and that's how I've always seen quintiles, as being about style. It's a very man-made aspect. It's not a combination that is. It's not a combination that's natural. We have to try hard to bring the two planets together. So if you've got a Jupiter Saturn quintile in the sky, it means you're trying hard to bring the two principles together. Jupiter is the principle of expansion, optimism. Saturn is the principle of contraction, perhaps pessimism. And with this quintile, we're trying to somehow adopt a style that combines both of them. So we perhaps are trying to expand outwards, but in a way that is very disciplined. I'm not quite sure how you would see that in terms of, for example, dress, because style is the way what we wear. And so that Jupiter Saturn quintile may be reflected in that. It may also be reflected in what people talk about. Jupiter Saturn as a pair is connected with a business cycle, and I think we've had this Jupiter Saturn quintile quite relatively recently, because Jupiter's now going retrograde. So we've had it. So this is the kind of second time we've had it this year. So last time we had this Jupiter Saturn quintile, what I said about it was that because Jupiter-Saturn is connected with the business cycle and economics and society, people are going to make the effort to give the impression that they know what's going on in terms of politics, economics, business. So you might find that there are people talking about the economy, apparently in a way that's very knowledgeable. It may be your friends, people at work, may even be people on TV, people saying, oh yes, well it's like this, and the Federal Reserve is going to do this, and they're going to keep pushing up interest rates, but then at a certain point there's going to be a recession, and then that's when they're going to pause, all that kind of stuff, how people go on. But perhaps you need to consider the possibility that they don't really know what they're talking about, and so that is something to consider. And people are going to be hedging their bets. Jupiter and Saturn, the style of hedging your bets. This kind of style, being optimistic but being pessimistic at the same time. Saying, the economy is okay, but that kind of thing. And that hedging of bets we might get with the Jupiter-Saturn quintile. And that may again be a sign that people don't really know what they're talking about. They don't know enough about what they're talking about to really commit to one view. I said, especially when it comes to sort of politics, economics, that kind of thing. But it does seem a lot of people have got a view about economics and the business cycle. So I would have said that Jupiter-Saturn quintile is the main thing going on today. There are other things. You'll notice that the moon is in Scorpio and it's opposition Jupiter. Moon opposition Jupiter is about extravagance. It's about pushing things too far. It's about not knowing when to stop. Moon in Scorpio is about, deep, heavy, intense emotions. And if it's opposition Jupiter, we might just not know when to stop. Some of us might just get too emotional. We might, really go on and on about our own feelings and our own emotions and how intense they are, and not knowing when to stop, perhaps in an embarrassing way. But it may be something quite internal, just having brooding feelings, opposition Jupiter. We just really get into them and we just get caught up in them and we just don't know when to stop emoting. So that's certainly a possibility with the moon opposition Jupiter. It's almost because they're in fixed signs. Moon is in Scorpio, Jupiter is in Taurus. They're both fixed signs. We're almost, in a perverse way, comfortable with our difficult feelings. We have these feelings. We have these feelings of anger and sadness and regret or whatever else it might be. But we want to hold on to them. We don't want to let go of them. But somehow they feel comfortable. So could be how moon opposition Saturn works. Now I started off by saying that I didn't think it was going to be a particularly dramatic day. Having said that, there are a few midpoints that probably are worthy of notice. The Sun is aspecting the Mars Hades midpoint. Mars Hades is about death, violence, putting one's energy into, at worst, maybe criminality, putting one's energy into things that are sleazy, that really should be avoided. But with the Sun aspecting the Mars Hades midpoint, some people may be tempted to misapply their energy. And in terms of war zones, it's just not very nice. The Sun hitting the Mars Hades, that's people getting killed, Mars Hades. And of course, we know that there are a lot of war zones, certainly Ukraine and the Middle East, but a lot of other places. In places could be the streets of America, wherever it is, or the streets of anywhere else. There are a lot of places. It's not just America. But the mean streets of wherever you're living. That could be Sun on the Mars Hades. So yes, there's unpleasantness there, and I think some people may actually get off on that unpleasantness. The unpleasantness could actually be like part of their identity. Also, Mercury is opposition the Pluto Hades midpoint. Let me just show you that. Let's put up the 8 Neptune, the hypothetical planets of the Uranian school. So there is, where's Pluto gone? So Pluto is in, there's Pluto in Capricorn. There's Hades. You can see Hades at 1342 Cancer. Hades is pretty much on America's sun at the moment. So that's something America needs to watch out for. There's a lot of unpleasantness going on in America and in the American government. But there's, and then you have Mercury. You can see Mercury is actually on the Pluto Hades midpoint. So Mercury is about communication. It is what we're communicating. And Pluto Hades is the principle of a transformation into something, could be in one sense a transformation into garbage, because Hades is the planet of garbage, but it's about the transformation as in the transformation of death and destruction. And this is going to be very much reflected in the way people are talking. It's probably going to be mainly politicians, maybe, whatever Hamas is talking about, whatever Israel is talking about, perhaps a lot of threats, people being happy to talk about very unpleasant subjects. And I think that what they're going to do is they're going to use unpleasant subjects as a way of as an attempt to transform things. So, that's what people do. People try to take over an argument by referencing atrocities, people being killed in unpleasant ways, innocent civilians being killed, so forth, children being killed. People using that as a way to get the moral high ground and to get attention. And of course, we're already seeing that with the Israel Hamas conflict. But we're going to really start to see that on Monday, I think, with Mercury on the Pluto Hades midpoint, and it's going to be part of the propaganda. And I know what I'm saying is kind of obvious, but it's there. We can see it in the skies. Another midpoint is Jupiter square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So Mars and Uranus is a principle of violence, weaponry. Uranus is technology, Mars is violence, using technology to get your way, using technology to create weapon systems and all of this kind of stuff. And Jupiter is square Mars, the Mars-Uranus midpoint. Now, I know Jupiter's supposed to be a fortunate planet, but Jupiter just makes things larger, makes things bigger, more intense, more scary, more dangerous, whatever. And so, with Jupiter on the Mars-Uranus square, that's there's a danger that technology gets out of control, that technology just does a lot of killing, and I think there'll be a certain reveling in it, people really getting into it, when, I suppose you can see that on the news, people talking about this technology in terms of weaponry, what these wonder weapons, these particular types of tanks, bombs, whatever, people just getting into all that kind of stuff. So that's something to be aware of, and it's not necessarily just on the international stage. It could be about the technology that we're working with down here, like chainsaws and things for causing destruction of the environment. That kind, that's a possibility with Jupiter opposition Mars, Uranus. People really getting into equipment, and equipment, with the kind of equipment that causes damage with a blade, that kind of thing. People just getting into it, using that kind of equipment with relish. Do you want to play with a chainsaw today? I mean, you might be tempted, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Things can go wrong. So that's the overall picture today. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to distill everything into my forecasts for the 12 signs. So here we go. These are my forecasts for today, which is Monday, October the 16th, 2023. Aries. Things are complicated, and you might feel that you just can't be bothered. After all, Aries wants everything to be straightforward. But once you start digging under the surface, you'll find interesting stuff, which could give you powerful insights into other people's motivations. Where there's money, there's trouble. Taurus. If you go out into the world, you'll find that the emphasis is on other people, and it may be difficult to get noticed and appreciated. At the same time, you may have to change your plans in order to deal with someone's erratic behaviour. But by adopting a tough, uncompromising style, you can gradually take control of the situation. Gemini. You feel that you've done a good job, and maybe that's true. However, you can't expect universal praise, and don't be surprised if you receive some constructive criticism. But really, things could always be better, and today you have a great capacity for hard work and for focusing on the things that really matter. Cancer. Your first instinct is to put yourself first, especially when it comes to pleasure and leisure. You know what you want, and if other people want to do something else, then too bad. But if you're too selfish, then your actions and your attitude could be self-defeating. So you really do have to consider the human dimension. Leo. There is somewhere you want to go, but is it the right place? Is it the right thing to do? The pull of the past is strong, and a trip down memory lane may cause more harm than good. Things just aren't the same, and the impulse to rekindle half-forgotten memories could bring more sadness than joy. In terms of money, wanting enrichment for the sake of it is nothing less than bad karma. Virgo. You want to keep things simple in the realm of fact rather than fiction. Yet today there is a tendency to exaggerate, and things you say might not be 100% true. Is this the impression you're trying to give? Also, you might be influenced by other people's exaggerations, and as a result, you could end up reaching the wrong conclusions. Libra. Life can be a script. Not thinking, just following an interlocking set of scripts that are triggered by predefined, pre-programmed events. But today, you have to think for yourself. Just when you think a particular action is appropriate, you realise that the situation is different and can't be neatly pigeonholed. Don't follow the crowd, and don't follow your instincts. Or should I say, avoid following your instincts. Scorpio. You're starting to get a sense of perspective. Yes, you have strong emotions, but you can now get a clearer sense of what's going on without being clouded by emotional distortions. This allows you to take action in a way that is balanced but also decisive. Don't be fooled by other people's appearance. It's a front. Sagittarius, Jupiter and Saturn are 72 degrees apart. That's the quintile aspect I was talking about, which is very much connected with style. Jupiter is your ruling planet, and you're trying to give a certain impression, being serious and disciplined, an image which is not particularly Sagittarian. And it's not an image that you can maintain forever, but it may serve a certain purpose. But it's probably not the right time for discussing your thoughts and feelings. Capricorn. Today, your image is important to you, and as a result, your general approach may not be entirely typical. You'll want to show the world that you can be optimistic and fun-loving, even though it's not entirely the real you. And in the process, you have the opportunity to make some new friends. Aquarius. You want to follow through on some of your plans, which might have been developed over the weekend. Your single-minded approach could be very effective, not least because you won't be distracted by concerns that are largely irrelevant, but in the process, you're unlikely to make yourself popular. Pisces. You're not satisfied with the usual fare. You're looking for something different, which can transport you into a new reality. You can find what you're looking for, provided you put in the effort. You keep looking and you move on the moment you start yawning. And you might then realize that the thing you seek is close at hand. I'm now going to move to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Monday going to be like for people watching this video? And I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times, and the first hexagram I got was this. Hexagram 38, opposition. We are kind of at odds with the rest of the world. We're at odds with other people. There isn't much scope for agreement here. We may feel actually somewhat threatened. Now, there are 2 moving lines here. This one, 3rd line is moving, and the 5th line is moving. Now, the 3rd moving line is a bit unpleasant in its symbolism. The symbolism is of people's kind of getting their noses cut off. What that is telling us is that, this is talking about, I suppose, ancient China, when you had, as a sort of punishment, mutilation was part of the punishment. People would, if they'd done something wrong or were perceived to have done something wrong, they could get their noses cut off. And so what this 3rd line is about is seeing people's noses getting cut off, seeing people getting punished. And we're thinking, well, that could so easily have been us, but we've somehow managed to escape this time round. And so, the Wilhelm translation talks about a bad beginning and a good ending. It's kind of a bit selfish there, because we're not the ones, we manage to escape our nose getting cut off, and we learn from other people's pain. We don't want to be like them. So if we're dealing with, forces that we can't really confront. That's the opposition. We are estranged from society. We're dealing with things that are bigger than us. And so we kind of get this warning that we really need to watch our step. And we take on board that warning. Other people, they're the ones that get hit. So in a sense, that's favourable for us, even if other people are not having a good time. But we are still living in opposition. And we just may, in general, in our social life, just feel we're just estranged from other people. Then the fifth line moves. Now, in the I Ching, the fifth line is usually the most fortunate line in a hexagram. And indeed, the fifth line is fortunate. It's a point where we accept that, yes, we are estranged from the rest of the world, from society and so forth. But we are not totally estranged. But we have to have our eyes open. There is someone out there who we really need to be in touch with, who's on our wavelength, who can really help us. Perhaps we can help them as well. But we have to recognize them. The suggestion that I Ching does is saying that they're kind of wrapped up, this person. They're wrapped up in such a way that we can't recognize them, we can't see them. So we have to be aware there that person, this is a reading for today, there's someone out there we need to be in touch with, but we're not going to recognize this person. So we've got to have our eyes open. We've got to think. Every person we meet, we need to consider the possibility that this person may be able to help us, may be able to break the opposition, may be able to get us back in touch with society. Okay, we don't have to be in touch with the whole of society. We just have to be in touch with this one person who can really help us move forward. So that's the opposition. It starts off today not being great, but it's not disastrous. We avoid disaster, even if other people get their noses cut off, and we can meet up with someone who can really be really helpful. But we do have to have our eyes open. Now, this hexagram 38 opposition, it does move. So we've got these two broken lines, and they become unbroken, which takes us to hexagram number 1, which is the creative. This is about action. This is a very positive hexagram because all of the lines are unbroken. It's about initiating action. We have got to do something. So at some stage in the day, we reach a point where we actually have to take the initiative. We can move beyond that opposition. We're able to realign with the rest of the world. We can connect with other people. And we can make things happen. And so in the end, don't be afraid of taking the initiative. Of course, I'm not encouraging you to take any initiative. Of course, if it's physically dangerous, if it's stupid, then of course don't do it. But in the realm of being sensible, that's the thing to do. So yes, so the conclusion to this I Ching reading is when you've sorted everything out, it will be time to take action. And I think you'll know what that action is, and I think you'll know when the time has arrived when you actually have to do something. I'm now going to move back to the astrology, and I want to look at the Hamas leadership. Well, just two Hamas leaders, and see if we can find anything interesting, whether it can shed any light on what's going on. I don't think it will shed any light, but I think we need to personalize Hamas. We just see it, just Hamas, terrorist group. I suppose it depends on your view, But then, we've got to look at who are the people behind it. So let's look at these two men, both born in 1962. So the first the first leader I want to look at is Ismail Haniyeh. So remember, he is the chairman of the Hamas political bureau. He is the one that is resident in Qatar. I believe he's not actually in Gaza. And he's like the man in charge. And he's born on January the 29th, 1962. I don't know what time he's born. So he was born the day before King Abdullah II of Jordan. I don't know. I suppose these two men were born very close to each other. I mean, it's an area where Israel is a small country. Jordan is to the east, and then you've got to Gaza. I don't know what happening. I don't know what the actual distance between Gaza Strip and Amman is, but they were born relatively close to each other, and so their charts are effectively identical, given the fact I don't know when Ismail Haniyeh was born. At the beginning of 1962, there was a huge build-up in Aquarius. At the time, astrologers knew at the beginning of 1962 that there was going to be this build-up. And I think there was a day when all 7 traditional planets were in Aquarius. And there was some crazy stuff being suggested. Some people were saying, oh, well, this was the beginning of the age of Aquarius because of that big lineup in Aquarius. I mean, reality is the age of Aquarius doesn't start for centuries. But anyway, that's another matter. Or, worse still, the Antichrist could have been born at the beginning of 1962. I was born, by the way, May the 30th, 1962. By the time I was born, this whole thing had completely broken up. So don't worry, you're not listening to the Antichrist. But there was that view at the beginning of 1962. And Ismail Haniyeh, like King Abdullah, has 5 traditional planets in Aquarius. When I was talking about Abdullah, I was suggesting that he was quite detached. I have no idea. As I said, I for a short period of time I was at boarding school with him. I'm just trying to remember his personality. Really, would I have said, from what I can remember, was he an Aquarius? Was he an Aquarian? Typically Aquarian. I'd say he was more of a Scorpio, actually, from what I can remember. But he was not. I mean, he was a perfectly pleasant child, if I can remember rightly. What Ismail Haniyeh was like, I don't know. Was he a pleasant child? I have no idea. Obviously, he was born in a refugee camp, I think. So a much tougher upbringing, obviously, than Abdullah, at least in terms of wealth and lack of wealth and poverty, I suppose. But there is that, the detachment would be, I suppose, if you're going to be a leading light in an organization that plants bombs and kills people and that kind of thing, you probably do need a certain amount of detachment. Maybe you're thinking, well, this is what has to be done. Aquarius is also a very sort of political sign. But as far as the detachment is concerned, you think what's going on in Gaza at the moment. They had this Hamas invades Israel, and as a result, Gaza is going to be destroyed, or from what I can gather, almost destroyed. Many more Gazans are going to be killed than Israelis are going to be killed. And so I'm assuming that Haniyeh knew about this thing before it happened. But that, the Aquarian calculation would be, well, let's not worry. Obviously, he's not going to worry too much about the Israelis being killed, but what about the Gazans being killed? Well, he's going to, perhaps Aquarius would say, well, the ends justify the means. You can't make you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. That's a very Aquarian way of thinking, It's just got to be done. And Aquarius would be incredibly good at that kind of logic. He's got the Mars, he's got Mars in late Capricorn, 2715 Capricorn, like King Abdullah. When I was talking about King Abdullah's chart, for reference, this is King Abdullah's chart, where we do have a time of birth. There's his Mars in Capricorn. He's got 19 Capricorn rising. So, I suggested with King Abdullah that, it's a good Mars. It's a very assertive Mars, but Capricorn is not a crazy Mars. Perhaps it's that Mars that helps him stay in power. So that's how I thought it might work with King Abdullah. With Ismail Haniyeh, I suppose if you're a leader of, an organization that is pretty warlike, I suppose is a terrorist organization, at least many think it's a terrorist organization, having a strong Mars is very useful because it's about aggression, it's about attacking people. That's great, Mars in late Capricorn for that. So that's good. Moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio, it's the only traditional planet in a water sign. And, moon in Scorpio doesn't forget. It doesn't forget slights. It doesn't forget what's happened in the past. Now, maybe in a male chart, you're supposed to move out of your moon in Scorpio. You move into your moon, you kind of transition into your sun, but the moon is still there. It's your immediate response, and moon in Scorpio just holds on to things. It's so he is leader of, of an organization which has a very uncompromising approach. It wants to destroy Israel, and it is not going to change. It has not forgotten what's happened to the Palestinians since the 40s. And so moon in Scorpio just holds on to it. And that moon in Scorpio, although all that Aquarian stuff is able to countenance thousands of Gazans getting killed, thousands of Palestinian Gazans getting killed, it's the means that justify the ends. Yes, although that is true, at the same time, the people getting killed around him, I suppose since he was born, all those people, he probably doesn't forget any of them. He remembers everything, probably. And so that makes him very rigid, as he would have to be a successful leader of Hamas, and that's that moon in Scorpio. We are going to be avenged, and we are going to get our land back, and that's the way it is. So I think that's possibly how it works with him. But as far as the attack is concerned, so the this is what did the attack do to him? So this was the attack on October the 7th. So I've got Ismail Haniyeh's chart in the middle and the chart for the attack on the outside. I looked at when I looked at King Abdullah's chart, I didn't find a great deal, except there was Uranus squaring Mercury. So you can see that at the time of the attack, Uranus was at 2228 Taurus, and Mercury was at 2231 Aquarius. So Uranus was actually square his Mercury, and I think that transit that's interesting because Mercury is the way you think. It's the way you perceive the world. Then you've got Uranus square Mercury. A bit of a surprise there. It's almost like he wasn't fully expecting what was happening. Even if he knew about the attack, it's almost like he didn't quite think about the implications of it. When he saw the news, obviously, I assume he knew about it, but somehow the news and the way the whole thing was coming over may have been a bit of a surprise, a bit of a shock to him. So that may be the case. I don't know. But anyway, that is Ismail Haniyeh's chart. Now, the number 2... Apparently, I apologize if I got that wrong. My understanding of it is number 2. The Hamas chief in the Gaza Strip. So he is actually in Gaza. Is wrong one. Yahya Sinwar. He was. I hope he was born on October 29th, 1962. The Arab and Russian Wikipedia, I think even the Bulgarian Wikipedia, said he was born on October 29th, 1962. But if I've got that wrong, my apologies. So what do we see about this chart? Assuming I've got the date right, have I got it, I have no way if I got the time. First thing to notice about Yahya Sinwar's chart is he has got no Earth. Okay, he's got a Uranus-Pluto conjunction, but these are generational planets. He's got no Earth in his chart. I'm guessing he was more involved in the planning of this thing than the number 1. Ismail Haniyeh. No Earth. If you're trying to build a country or you're in charge of a country, you're the man on the ground. You need to have some kind of grounding, don't you? You need to think about what ordinary people are going to need. You're going to think about logistics of all of this, and maybe that's a problem with him. It's just maybe all about the struggle. It's all about how you're going to, get your way. So that lack of Earth may be something to consider. He also has loads of planets in fixed signs. So the fixed signs are Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. So there are the fixed signs. He's got Saturn in Aquarius, Mars in Leo, and then he's got Sun, Neptune, Moon, Venus in Scorpio. So that means he's got 5 of the 7 traditional planets in fixed signs. So once he's decided on a course of action, he's just gonna follow it through, and he's obviously very rigid. And I think that's the way it is in that part of the world. And like Ismail Haniyeh, he's got Moon in Scorpio as well. Moon in Scorpio doesn't let go. Everything I said about Moon in Scorpio about Ismail Haniyeh and about holding on to things, remembering things, does apply to him. And that moon in Scorpio is touched by Neptune. He was born just after a Scorpio new moon. You can see his sun is at 5:30 Scorpio, moon is at 15 Scorpio. So yeah, all of that. So there's a lot of Scorpio there, and we're seeing Scorpio maybe at its worst. Really wanting revenge for something. It's a reminder that Aleister Crowley, when he was in the Book of Thoth, when he was talking about the different tarot cards, when he talked about, I think when he was talking about the Death card, which is very much a card associated with Scorpio, he mentioned that Scorpio has there is three sides to Scorpio. The higher side is Scorpio, the eagle, sort of soaring over everything, just not getting involved with the material world and all its mess, soaring over. The intermediate symbol for Scorpio is the snake. The snake just doesn't want to get involved. But it doesn't soar. It just hides under a rock. But then you've got the final aspect of the Scorpio, which is the scorpion. And there is this tradition. I don't think it's actually all this. Not a tradition like. This idea that's not actually true, but I believe. But if you take a scorpion and you surround it with a ring of petrol, and you set fire to the petrol, or gasoline in America, the scorpion will sting itself to death. And so maybe with this, he's a guy on the ground, and maybe this is like Gaza is kind of surrounding itself with a ring of petrol and is stinging itself to death. Okay, the Israelis are bombing it and whatever, but you get that kind of image. There is something at its worst. Scorpio is incredibly self-destructive, and maybe we're seeing that there. And you can see this with Sinwar's chart, again, assuming he really is born on October the 29th. You see, he's got a Mars-Saturn opposition, and he's pretty much got Sun on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So you've got a T-square, Mars-Saturn opposition with Sun on a T. In fixed signs, that really is death and destruction. That's a really vicious T-square, which the whole thing is manifesting. And now we've got Mars. Just a reminder, Mars is now in Scorpio. Sorry, I should know where exactly Mars is going to be, but Mars is right as I speak. Okay, it's now on today, which is October the 16th. Mars is at 2:56 Scorpio. By the end of the week, Mars will be on his Sun. So Mars will be hitting at T-square. So if I were to be advising him, I would have said end of a week, he needs to be very careful. I mean, I'm not saying that Israel will succeed in killing him, but end of a week, he has to be careful. He needs to be properly protected. Not that he's listening to me, but that's end of a week. I think around Friday. That's when he really does have to be careful. But it's a pretty nasty horoscope, I would have said. Now, as far as what's going on now, I thought it was interesting to look at it from a perspective of solar arc directions. So the idea with solar arc directions is that you move everything in a chart 1 degree, 1 degree for every, 1 degree for every year of life. So if you want to know what's going on in his chart, you'd move everything 61 degrees, because he's got his 61st birthday coming up in a couple of weeks. Let's assume he makes his birthday. But so let's just look at the. So there's his chart. His chart in the middle. You can see that the Jupiter-Uranus opposition, which he has in his natal chart, has moved on. So by solar arc Uranus is at 6 Scorpio, just past his Sun, and solar arc Jupiter is at 428 Taurus. So what's happened is that this Jupiter-Uranus opposition in his natal chart by solar arc has moved onto his Sun and has moved onto his Saturn-Uranus and has moved onto his Mars-Saturn midpoint. And I think that's really deadly. I mean, I think that certainly symbolizes this attack. This is why I'm thinking that Yahya Sinwar was probably much more involved in this attack than Ismail Haniyeh. Just from the astrology, I mean, that's my feeling. He saw this as the big thing that was somehow going to move things. It was somehow going to create the liberation and freedom he was looking for. Of course, it was hitting his T-square. It's hitting his Sun on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And so through this, you get all of this death and destruction. And, this makes me think that with this solar arc direction on his Sun, on his T-square, it's going to be really difficult for him to survive this, given what we know. I mean, I know I haven't even got a time chart, but he's got Mars on his Sun, he's got Jupiter, he's got this solar arc Jupiter-Uranus hitting his Sun, and that's on his Mars-Saturn midpoint. I don't have a time of birth. You can't predict death without it. Certainly, you have no chance of predicting death without a time of birth. But it's really, really dangerous for him, and that's obvious. You don't have to be an astrologer to say that. I'm just saying that we can see the symbolism in his chart of that. So over the next few weeks, he has to be very, very careful, to put it mildly. So that's Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar. I just wanted to look at the two charts of sort of real people, two real leaders of Hamas, and I'm not sure if that really sheds too much light on the situation, because in a way it's kind of telling us what we already knew. But so what I'm really saying is that the astrology kind of confirms what we already know. The charts, particularly the chart of Yahya Sinwar and what's going on in Gaza, it fits. So that's something we can say. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.